To get started on this sequel video, I think it's topical to ask an important question. What's the purpose of a sequel? Disregarding the financial aspect, I think it's to expand on, or go into more detail, or just somehow look into a subject or scenario more, right? Hopefully anyway. Maybe it's taking a longer look, or perhaps a completely different angle entirely. And if we're talking video games, the options obviously open up to the gameplay as well. I don't want to linger on this question too much, as it's merely that, a question. There's no specific right or wrong answer to it. I've got my biases on the subject, but there's different ways of doing things for a reason. Variety is the spice of life. And all of that brings me to Trails of Cold Steel 2, Electric Boogaloo Toogaloo, or Cold Steel 2 anyway. Cold Steel 2 is interesting. It's the kind of game that will make me say, oh my god, and then, oh my god, kinda back to back. I would definitely say it's better than the first game. It tries to improve on parts I didn't like the lack of character control, and it's very much a direct continuation. Like the last game I ended at like level 69-ish, maybe more, but this game you start in the 40s and I ended at level 140. Yes, 140, it just kinda goes that high, and that's cool. I'm like 1000% positive there's peeps out there who have grinded to a max level of which I don't know what it is, but the numbers go up very linearly, so there's some Master Quartz stuff like draining 1% EP with magic damage, and that becomes an unending stream of nuclear strikes on an even more ridiculous scale, and it was fun. That said, it's still a tried and true Falcom Cold Steel game for better or worse. I think this entry took me like 75-ish hours to beat, a full 10 hours longer than one's, and you know what, honestly that is fine still. I still like the game. I do like it. Not that it's unexpected, but we're gonna be getting into some spoilers at this point, because, well, this is a sequel game, and, well, it's a direct continuation. There's going to be spoilers. If you didn't think otherwise, that is 1000% on you, and I apologize. For nothing. This game takes place a month after the first game, although for Reen, he wakes up directly after. Yeah, he's been asleep for a long time. In his Divine Knight, or I guess mech if you want to go by anime standards, we saw this mech at the end of the first game, and we had 2 final battles with it, and now it's going to be a pretty dang big part of the gameplay here on out. This game decides to focus on the aftermath of the first game when a civil war did break out, and Reen now has to go around and collect all of his friends who've been scattered over the past month, unite forces, and fight back against a looming threat, which is only the first part really. To do a broad strokes glossing over everything, it eventually does end with some really supernatural crap like the first game, but like dialed up to 11. There's a huge tower that appears, the world looks like it's ending, everyone has to go in and like try and stop this bullcrap from happening, and that's only the fake final dungeon. Then there's another like even more real final dungeon, and it's gonna be honest, it was fun. It made me think fun things. I like the supernatural aspect way more than the political stuff, because that stuff doesn't interest me. I actually kind of enjoyed the narrative on this one, going around and collecting and accruing power to fight back against a looming evil threat, but the gameplay assaults me on a personal level, but again, we'll get to that later. It was really nice seeing all the classmates in their new get-ups. It's great. Everyone looks so much better, almost everyone in my opinion. It's nice seeing what your fellow classmates have been getting up to in this war effort in the past month. And the way the story and gameplay is structured, you get to pick them up in groups and basically have a big growing party with a few extra helping hands this time around. Sharon, Claire, and Tovol, as well as Sarah. And all of these characters are kind of not permanent until the final dungeon, the true final dungeon, and then they are permanent and you can take them as much as you want, and it's great. Admittedly, as this game only takes place 1 month after the first game, the characters are largely the same, but there's a few revelations the further you go on, of course, and while you get to do more in this game, this is still just set up for later games. It is as annoying as it sounds for me. Your characters are also almost never good enough. The amount of times you kick the enemy's ass in the gameplay, but the cutscene says, they were just playing around, is frankly insulting. Why have the gameplay segments mean so little to the actual game I'm playing? If you lose these segments, it's game over. If you win, you lose from a story standpoint. It feels like one of those things where they had an idea for the story and they didn't exactly know how to make it work for the gameplay, so they just kind of have the gameplay in there to get the player from point A to point B, and then they kind of just did their own story without any sort of consequences mattering, which is a real shame because the gameplay is incredibly improved even with just like the minor tweaks they've done to this one. It's hard for me to take the narrative seriously when I realize I can assault the enemies with literal godlike powers and the sun, but they're just like, nah bruh, I was just testing you the entire time. Okay, yeah, alright, cool, that's awesome. At least I got experience from this. Oh, crap. Sometimes you don't get experience. That's cool. Oh, right. I think I forgot to mention that I really don't care about, like, any of the villains in this game. There is one that I like that is actually pretty decent. I mentioned that there was going to be spoilers here. Crow is a damn good villain for this series. He's not my favorite villain of all time, of course, but like, I like the fact that he has conviction and he isn't like a purely evil asshole. He's a mercenary type of character, but like, he has a conviction and he doesn't bullcrap you into like, oh, these are my ideals, I'm fighting for a better future. He's just out for revenge, and he comes by it honestly. He is the only villain I give a shit about, though. And it really doesn't help that 99% of the interactions with villains are, ha, you're not good enough to fight us, I'll play around with you. It may be an exaggeration, but it was definitely how I felt playing the game, and I did not like it. That aspect anyway. Let's switch over to a happier subject, the music. There's some really good tracks in this game. I think the game's final dungeon theme, as I think I've mentioned before, has some of the greatest impact I've felt in the series thus far. And I'll say more on 3's, which I think is just as good when I get there, but for now, 2 is really knocking it out of the park. I mentioned the Divine Knight stuff previously. The Divine Knight theme is amazing, which does bring me right back to the mech battles. I don't love them. They're not awful, but they're a glorified rock, paper, scissors experiment. You target the arms, the body, the head, and the enemy has stances for upcoming attacks, which change which one is currently vulnerable. When you hit the right part, you'll unbalance them and get a follow-up attack, and you'll basically be building up your BP gauge to do a super and rinse and repeat while predicting their bullcrap. But yeah, the music carried it for me. It's incredibly intense, and great electronic music always gets my vote. And the voice work to go with these battles really solidified it as a fun experience to enjoy. Really did have a good time with them. It's one of those things that could get extremely stale, but they actually cared to space out these fights enough so that it's an actually impactful gameplay moment to bust it out. Until late game, they give you the ability to very literally summon Valimar in a regular battle to beat the ever-loving Christ out of regular enemies, because you know what? It's time for some me time, baby. The music did its job. I am in no way going to criticize the music, so I'll just leave it at that, actually. My hat is off to the sound team. They did a damn good job for this game. Seriously, good job. I've sprinkled in tidbits about the actual gameplay itself, or at least alluded to the gameplay itself. But if I'm being completely honest, it's basically just using the same engine as the first game. It does feel basically exactly the same, but there are two really notable new additions. The first major one is the use of overdrive. In addition to building up your BP for joint attacks, you also build up overdrive charges. Later on, you can build up to 2, but you only start with 1. And this maneuver lets you and your linked partner take 3 immediate turns. Whoever initiates it gets 2, and the other one gets 1. You will always crit and unbalance the enemy, I'm pretty sure, if possible. And you immediately recover 15% HP and EP on top of that. And all arts are instantly cast. Yeah, it's as busted as it sounds. The second most notable thing is the addition of what's called Lost Arts. They are super mega powerful spells that do crazy stuff that kinda literally break the game mechanics, and that's really cool. They require a tiny bit of finagling to actually equip because they require specific slots. If it's a fire and time quartz, it must be equipped on a fire or time slot, for example. The only other thing to really worry about with these lost arts is the fact that they take a long time to cast, there's a lot of delay with them, and they cost your full EP bar at base. You can reduce all of those. So once you do, you have really powerful spells that can only be cast one time per battle. Now, I only found 2 of them because I just didn't explore enough, even though I thought I did. But the 2 that I got, one let me summon the frickin' sun to deal 5s damage, unmitigated to everything, and it had a 200% chance to cause burn. The other one was really interesting and healed for 200% of my character's HP. You literally overhealed, to your double your max. And it's really fun to deny some enemies a KO because, oops, I have 200% HP. Can't say I devised any strategies around it, but if you ever fall on those like free cast, free EP tiles, it's fun to just say, yo, what if God came down here and said no to this battle? These lost arts are found off of like super bosses in this game, which appear partway through and are meant to be like huge indicators of they're really strong, you need to run away and come back later when you're more powerful. That said, when I first encountered it, I just kind of redid my setup a little bit, and I was like a high 70s, I think like 77 when I first took one down, and they're level 100, so with a good proper setup, you can take these things down pretty solidly. And so I had access to this stuff almost immediately. It was really nice. Moving on to the last portion, the graphics are the same. It's the same exact engine, same art style, so if you liked or disliked the first game, you'll like and dislike this one for basically the same reason. That said, aesthetically, the character designs got way better, since you aren't just looking at the same minor variations of high school military uniform. Reen's got a uniform fur coat thing, Eustace has a noble leader outfit, Laura has on a cool coat, Emma has on a cute witch outfit thing, Alyssa looking cute in her archery outfit, Sarah hasn't changed, but really you can't improve on perfection until the 3rd game. Elliot has a cool coat. Okay, you know what, I'll just be honest, a lot of people just got really cool coats, but the actual color variation is amazing. I love it. It's so goddamn good. So, looking at it overall, I think Cold Steel 2 is probably my favorite? Like, it's got the most going for it with, in my opinion, the least negatives. It fixed the annoying school segments of the first game, which I couldn't care about, gave me more fun gameplay options and variety, lets you actually pick a party and stick with it for the majority of the game. It still has forced party members, but like, it's a lot less, in your face. And when the music is good, it's good. Oh my god. Seeing all the familiar faces with cool edgy glow-ups was a wonderful feeling too. I'm actually really glad I bought the costume DLC for the game on discount. I still maintain it's a solid game, and even though I like a lot of the improvements, the pacing of the story and constant humiliation the player receives just for playing the game and winning a fight over and over is laughable at best. I give it a very shaky 6 out of 10. It's fun, but god does it have very egregious flaws. Oh right, apparently there's also some really heavy story hidden stuff hidden behind a full New Game Plus of this game. I don't like that stuff, but after YouTubing it, I don't get why people are upset about it when it's all explained in 3 anyway, so it's like, I guess I'm not the target audience for this outrage. I think people need to calm down. So there you have it. There's my incredibly biased, incredibly abridged review of Cold Steel 2. And you can bet your sweet bippy that I am looking forward to getting my thoughts down for Cold Steel 3, because Christ almighty, I have some words to say to that game. If you thought whatever I was saying was bipolar here, there's so much back and forth I had with Cold Steel 3. I genuinely can't wait to make a video about it, but it'll take some time. So, until then, if you want to put your thoughts down, please go ahead. I put this out here for y'all.